The second year after marrying the school beauty. I regretted it. She had delicate features. Long legs. A soft waist. A full chest and a round buttocks. However, her strong career ambition touched my bottom line. Facing her lies and perfunctory responses again and again, I went from believing to being silent. People in the company laughed at me behind my back for being honest and gave me the nickname Big Sucker. Finally, I gave up. After signing the divorce papers, I took out my phone and called a number that I hadn't contacted for a long time. Stop talking. I received a strict order. I can't give you a penny. I sighed and said, tell the old man that I want to go home. Before long, countless luxury cars came head-on like a long shining chain. Later, the school beauty called my phone repeatedly. Her voice choking. Husband, there are bad people on the bed. I'm scared. My wife was called to the office by the general manager for a meeting. And by the way, the window blinds were pulled down. There was a lot of discussion in the company's small group. Absurd. What kind of meeting can only be held between two people? Those who understand know. With Paige's enchanting faith like a fairy, any man would be tempted. Okay. Everyone stopped easing. What's wrong with saying a few words? Anyway, the big sucker isn't in the group. He is in the group. My colleagues glanced at me sideways one after another, with sympathy and more ridicule. I felt very uncomfortable. My wife had explained more than once, asking me not to misunderstand, and not to pay attention to the rumors. But this time, I wanted to go in and see what was going on. I strode towards the office. My colleague's surprised gazes closely followed me. The male assistant manager stopped me at the door. His tone was unquestionable. Frank has very important things. No one is allowed to disturb. The word important in his mouth was pronounced in a strange tone. I was too lazy to say more to him. I pushed the door open. My wife was sitting on the sofa. Her face still a little flushed. Robert. What's wrong with you? The general manager turned his back and walked back to his desk and scolded me. Don't you know to knock on the door first if there is something? With this quality, and this pattern, do you still want a pay raise? I loosened my clenched fist and said expressionlessly, yes. You have a big pattern. You call everyone dad. The general manager was furious and threw the thermos cup on the table at me. I dodged to the side and stared at my wife. Paige. Come out. In the company lounge. Paige looked up at me guiltily and scratched the palm of my hand. Husband. I'm about to get a promotion soon. Can you stop making trouble? I shook off her hand and coldly questioned, why did you lie to me? She trembled and lowered her head. I didn't lie to you. I raised my hand and pinched her chin, forcing her to look up and meet my eyes. You kept saying that he has no interest in you. Then why did he hide a bomb in his crotch just now? To her lips pursed and then pursed again. Her face was a little blank. To be honest, I'm really tired. Instead of waiting silently here for her to make up reasons, it's better for me to speak directly. Paige. Let's get a divorce. Lying and deceiving only happens times or countless times. I can't trust you anymore. She smoothed her hair by her ear. Yes. I lied to you. The general manager does have an interest in me. Lying is just to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. A woman's prime is very short. If you insist on getting a divorce, then how should I be compensated for the time I wasted on you? She still said what was on her mind. From falling in love to getting married in college. In her eyes, being with me was just a waste of time. I knew before that she was very competitive. Whether in the student union, or in various activities. She must be the most dazzling existence. Even now entering the workplace. She doesn't hesitate to use such means to get promoted quickly. Now, I can no longer guess how much of what she says is true and how much is false. Robert. Except for being poor, you are indeed a quite perfect man, both in appearance and figure. So, I am willing to give you another chance. Tell me, are you serious about getting a divorce? She hooked her lips and there was a faint smile on her face. That look of having me in her control again. Clearly it was she who made an unforgivable mistake. But she still gave me a chance. Suddenly 3 letters appeared in my mind: PUA. I'm serious. I raised my head and looked at her. My expression was serious. Rather than being on tenterhooks every day fearing that you will cuckold me, it's better to break up as soon as we say. After all, without me, you can be more unrestrained. 3. The smile on her face slowly solidified. After observing me for a while, she finally opened her red lips. Robert, you don't need to be so petty. I shook my head, speechless lie, and insisted on getting a divorce certificate today. The general manager pushed open the door of the lounge and walked in with his head held high. Paige. Divorce him. He acts so arrogantly every day. I'll tell the personnel department. The position of director will be yours. Let's go open champagne to celebrate tonight. His eyes looking at Paige became even brighter. He naturally put his arm around her shoulder. He doesn't cherish you. There are plenty of men who cherish you. Don't be afraid. Brother supports you. And she didn't dodge. Instead, she nodded gratefully. I was really amused. She suddenly became so strange. Since you gave me a ring, then I will give you all my loyalty and enthusiasm. This promise was said by her in person. It turns out that people will change. Looking at the general manager's provocative eyes. Although I had already decided to get a divorce, possessiveness and unwillingness started to act up again. Paige. As long as you slap him and resign and leave with me, I will pretend that nothing happened today. I looked at her expectantly. As long as she was willing, I would let go of the past. And soon it will be the 3rd year of our marriage. The agreed deadline is almost here. I can also take her home. The general manager seemed to have heard some great joke. He covered his stomach and bent over laughing. Paige frowned and there was a hint of disgust in her eyes. Robert, why are you still so naive? 4. Do you know the market value of this company? Do you know how much the annual salary of a director starts at? Forget it. Let's get a divorce. Your vision is too short. We are not from the same world. Hearing her words, my heart cooled by half. The general manager agreed and clapped his hands. He said with a smile, let's go. I'll send to old acquaintances to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I grabbed Paige's wrist and pulled her over. The general manager directly started to act. He pushed me against the wall. You little brat. Try touching her again? I grabbed his collar and tightened my grip. In an instant, I pressed him against the wall instead. As long as we haven't divorced yet, she is still my wife. Why can't I touch her? As for you, if I give you face and call you Frank. If I don't give you face. What are you? Are you yelling at me here? Paige's eyes were filled with panic. She worriedly rushed forward and ordered me to let go. Robert. Let go quickly. If you dare to hurt him, you will be finished for the rest of your life. Of course I knew what Paige meant. He could become the general manager at a young age. Nothing more than having some background at home. But the more I looked at his face, the more I hated it. What should I do? I took out a pen from my pocket. He struggled. I hit his lower body with my knee. He let out a howl of pain and curled up cursing me. Robert. You reckless fool. Dare to hit me. Do you know who my dad is? I pushed open the cap of the pen with my thumb. I wrote a cow on his left face and a horse on his right face. I pressed hard. Little drops of blood appeared on his fair and tender face. At the same time, he howled even louder. Paige finally panicked. She shouted for people regardless of her image. Colleagues quickly poured in and pulled me to the side in a mess. Oh my God. Frank. Are you okay? Quick. Take a tissue and wet it. Here. Make way. I'll bring a chair over for Frank to sit on. Everyone's obsequious appearance made the scene a little funny. What made me feel most ironic was that Paige stood in the middle of the crowd and gently held up the general manager's face. She pouted and blew on the red area on his face. My heart seemed to be grabbed by something. Angry. Numb. In the end, I didn't feel anything. After a long time, Paige squeezed out of the crowd and glared at me coldly. You are really a thoughtless person. Let's go. Go to the Civil Affairs Bureau now. During the process of getting a divorce, she didn't say a word more. She just kept urging the staff to be quicker. After getting the certificate, she immediately took a photo and posted it on Moments. It seemed like a sigh of relief. Suddenly, she looked up at me and said, Robert, believe it or not, I have never regretted marrying you. But after all, as I said, we are not on the same path. She took a taxi and left in a hurry. I clicked on my phone. She posted a photo of the divorce certificate and didn't write any caption. But there were quite a few people in the circle congratulating her, saying things like the goddess has a new life. Especially her younger brother. He sent 3 thumbs up in a row. Sister, it's really great. You finally divorced that useless Robert. I suddenly felt like a fool. I began to think about the past. Paige and I clearly loved each other desperately at the beginning. Why did it turn out like this? After graduating from college, we got married as soon as we found jobs. Living in a small house was so warm. We hugged sweetly every night when we slept. She liked to plan our future. She said how much money she wanted to earn and what a lovely baby she would give birth to for me in the future. I really wanted to tell her that as long as we waited for 3 years, as long as she asked for the best things in this world, they would all be hers. But I swore an oath and couldn't say it. At this moment, I closed Moments and clicked on the number in the address book that I hadn't contacted for a long time and called. Hello. You kid. Don't say anything. Impossible. I dare not give you a penny. I was silent for a moment and said warily, Richard, I got divorced. Tell the old man. I want to go home. There was silence for a while. His voice became respectful and serious. Okay. Robert. After I check, I will send someone to pick you up. 7 After being with Paige in college, I carefully tried to discuss marriage with my dad. He was so angry that he smashed an 800 antique. He stood up and slapped me twice hard. You are so confused. What's your identity? Does she deserve you? Not to mention anything else. I became sworn brothers with old man of Samantha's family. We drank blood wine and swore that we would be in-laws in this life. With what you did, do I still want this old face? You can just play around. Has star. Date an internet celebrity. Give a breakup fee. I don't care. But you can't be serious. I spat out a mouthful of blood foam and clenched my fist firmly and told him, no. I want to marry her. He frowned and looked out the window. He sighed a long sigh. My heart skipped a beat. I thought he had compromised. Unexpectedly, he turned around and slapped me twice again. You unfilial son. You unfilial son. I can tell what kind of person and what kind of character just by looking. If you have no money and no power, with her looks, can you protect her? I nodded firmly again. Time will tell the truth. In the end, there was a 3-year agreement between me and my dad. Take off young Master Robert's vest, and don't take away a penny. Be an ordinary person, and be busy with 3 meals a day. As long as the salary is in place, the machine can work until it breaks down. He won't use his power to interfere with me. I will never ask him for help when I encounter difficulties. As long as I am still as affectionate as before after getting married to Paige for 3 years, he will recognize her as his daughter-in-law. It was almost 3 years. At the beginning, I found that there was something wrong between her and the general manager. In the chat records, the general manager was like a fox in heat. Every sentence had an implied meaning. She swore to me that it was definitely not what I thought. For this reason, she even said that the general manager was like a sister. Only then did I believe her. To apologize to her, I even spent all the saved salary and gave her an entry-level Hermes. She received the gift and smiled reluctantly. I thought she was distressed about me spending money. Later I found that there was an even more expensive bag hidden in her car. I went back home and packed my things. I threw everything including the keys into the trash and downstairs. By the side of the road, several luxury cars sped by. The harsh screeching sound rang in my ears. Did Richard come so quickly? Isn't it still several hours' drive from here to Beijing? Several sturdy strangers got out of the car. The leader, chewing gum, looked at his phone, then at me. This is the guy Frank is looking for. Drag him away. At on the top floor of the building. The music was booming, and the neon lights cut my line of sight. On the sofa by the swimming pool, the general manager sat with his legs crossed. One hand was on Paige's thigh, and the other was holding a cigarette. And Paige tilted her head, with a flirtatious smile on her face. I was pushed in front of them by several strong men. Looking a bit disheveled, the general manager took a slow puff of his cigarette and said slowly, "As for me, Frank, I never hold grudges overnight. I'm afraid it will affect my sleep." Paige put down her wine glass and her eyes with an ambiguous meaning fell on me. She was wearing the latest high-end velvet dress with one-shoulder design. Her facial features were so delicate and dazzling. In a good mood. "Ex-wife. You even put on such a beautiful makeup." No one expected that I would directly ignore Frank's words. She was slightly stunned and quickly avoided my eyes. But Frank became even angrier. He stood up and pointed at the mountain of wine glasses on the table. "Robert, it's very simple. Drink all these wines in one go and our matter will be forgotten. After all, we will soon be in the same group. There are some things I still want to talk to you about." I looked at the wine on the table. Anyone who dared to drink it all, if they were sent to the hospital 1 second later, they would die of alcohol poisoning. Of course, there is another option. He flicked the ash on his leather shoes. "TSK. Why are my shoes dirty? Kneel down and lick them clean. Then we'll be even. How about it?" I picked up a glass of champagne and drank it all in one gulp. "Do you like other people's wives so much? Do you want a cheap son?" Frank's face changed suddenly. He turned to look at Paige and completely tore off the mask. "Robert, you useless cowards still have the courage to act tough?" "Yes. That's right. I have my eyes on your wife. And she is willing too." "Really? That feeling is especially exciting." Paige's earlobes turned red. She pursed her lips and added, "I have nothing to do with Robert now." Seeing the rising tension, Frank's people behind me firmly grabbed my shoulders to prevent me from doing anything. Frank let out a long breath of foul air, and looked at me playfully. In the next second, he lifted Paige's chin and bent down to kiss her lips. Paige trembled a few times, and responded stiffly. "Enough," I said in a dull voice. Frank stopped when he heard my words. "Oh. I shouldn't have let her divorce you so early. Otherwise, I could really give you a real hat. How about this? I invite you to watch tonight. What do you think?" To be honest, it's impossible not to be angry. But according to Frank's meaning, Paige didn't go that far before the divorce. But it's only a matter of time for her to make that choice. Then I hope she won't regret it. Tonight. I also hope that I won't have any regrets. Quickly breaking free from the two people behind me, I, with great anger, forcefully smashed the wine bottle on the table onto Frank's head. "Do you think I'm afraid if you don't say anything? Do you really think you are a tough wolf just because you babble a few words?" Before anyone could react, I hit him hard in the abdomen with my knee. The force was extremely strong. Frank fell limply on the sofa and gritted his teeth. Hiss. "Do it. Beat him to death." The scene was in chaos. The women in the swimming pool exclaimed and climbed up and ran around. Many thugs came from all directions. It seemed that Frank was fully prepared today. Even though I had learned a few moves, I quickly fell into a disadvantage. After being punched a few times, I turned and ran towards Frank. He, who was watching the show, was shocked and shouted, "A bunch of useless people. Catch him quickly for me." I originally wanted to hold Frank hostage and retreat. Paige quietly took a step forward and stood in front of him. "Robert. Stop." "Me stop?" I looked at her with a sneer. Do you know that I might die here tonight? Ken, she raised her eyebrows in confusion. Can't you put aside your Maligo? Franken offered to forgive you. It was only after I'd begged for a long time that he agreed. Why are you so ungrateful? The footsteps behind were getting closer and closer. I raised my hand high. She didn't dodge. She bit her lip and closed her eyes, determined not to move aside. At the moment when I was in a daze, something exploded above my head and there was a roar in my ears. In the next second, I was kicked into the swimming pool, choking on a few mouthfuls of water. I swam to the shore. The shore was already full of thugs. Frank was supported and walked to the front. He spat into the swimming pool. Disable him. Give 10 times the money. If something happens, I'll take the blame. Robert. I want you to spend the rest of your life counting the days and waiting to die in a wheelchair. With a few splashes. Someone jumped down. The water splashed everywhere. I endured the pain and climbed up. I was pushed and staggered several steps by several thugs. Suddenly, I bumped into a soft chest. Stay away from me. It's all wet. It was a woman. I was wet all over and even wet some of her clothes. She took a step back in disgust and then sighed helplessly. In the next second, she took my hand and ran towards the exit of the top floor. And I noticed that 5 or 6 bodyguards who were over 6 feet tall were covering our retreat. After running down to floors, she let go of my hand and murmured, "What was said before? Told you not to learn martial arts. All brawn and no brains. Beaten like a fool." 11. I awkwardly touched my head. Thanks for today's matter. She pressed the elevator. There was a sparkle in her eyes and a mischievous smile. There's no need to say thanks. Who are we to each other? This made me a bit embarrassed. The beautiful woman in front of me who looked cute and gullible is called Samantha. We have known each other since we were young. We can be considered childhood sweethearts. Her father and my father swore an oath to be in-laws and insisted that the two of us have a child to gather the advantages of both families. But she has been like a monkey since she was young. She just loves to bully and beat me. The key is that I can't beat her. I learned martial arts to get back at her. Unexpectedly. When I came back after learning, she was sent abroad. When we met again, the two families discussed engagement. They even spent over 100,000 yuan to find an expert to calculate an auspicious day. But at that time, I already had Paige in my heart. After Samantha knew, she didn't say anything. She just chased me for 3 blocks with a tang saber. Finally, she sat on top of me. She couldn't bring herself to do it. Instead, she took out her phone and transferred me a 200 yuan blessing red envelope and told me to go away. Meeting her here at this moment, especially in such a messy situation, I clenched my toes so hard that I wished I could find a hole to crawl into. But fortunately, meeting her here should also be a coincidence. She probably doesn't know what's happening to me now. You owe me such a big favor today. Just saying thanks is useless. Do something practical. Give me a few million. She blinked her big eyes. She took out a piece of tissue and a pen from her pink bag. She pressed it against the wall, and started writing an IOU. Me. I should give it. I admit it. If it weren't for her, I don't know how miserable I would be today. It seems that there is one zero missing. Alas. I'm not good at math. It's cheaper for you. Sign it. I took the tissue. The beautiful black regular script was a bit smudged. It clearly said 10 million. Even to prevent me from cheating, it specifically noted 10 million yuan in full. I didn't say anything. I signed it and gave it back to her. She smiled with a pair of cute little dimples and pointed at the elevator door that was opening. I walked in side by side with her. Suddenly, she said without warning, "Just now, did your wife kiss someone else?" 12. The numbers on the elevator were jumping. I was so embarrassed that I didn't know what to do. I lowered my head and hummed. I added, "She's not my wife. We are already divorced." Oh, her voice was originally soft and she dragged a very long ending sound. I put my hand on my forehead and directly looked up at her flushed face. "Samantha. If you want to laugh, just laugh. Who knew that her expression changed? She frowned and gently raised her hand to touch my head. Her tone was full of pity. I know you are very sad. You gave up being a young master and fought for an answer. It's a pity that not all sincere emotional efforts will have results. Robert. If you want to cry, just cry. I was stunned for a moment. There was some bitterness in my heart. Who knew? Her tone became playful again. Am I right, Turtle? My anger flared up again instantly. This woman is here to laugh at me. The elevator reached the first floor. I strode out. She followed with a smile. When we reached the side of the road, she honked her bright yellow sports car. Do you want me to drive you? It's free. The headlight shone on her wet white short-sleeved shirt, revealing some outlines. I turned my face. No need. She quickly reacted. She got into the car and honked twice at me. All right then. I'll leave first. Remember to transfer money to me after you get home. My gaze fell on her red earlobes. I wondered if she came here specially for me this time. So I directly asked him. She pursed her lips and explained faintly. What are you dreaming about? I came with my boyfriend. He is shooting an outdoor advertisement here. He is a big star. Super handsome. I waved my hand and took a taxi to the hotel. I called Richard. There is a person named Frank. Acquire his company as quickly as possible. Find out his background and relationships. I want to deal with him. 13 Richard told me that my dad had taken a private plane to go abroad for business and wouldn't be back for the time being. He had verified the news of my divorce and took me out of the blacklist. He also sent me 3 60-second voice messages. I didn't dare to listen. I clicked to convert to text. As expected. It was directly scolded until the font was garbled. The general meaning was that I was a born fool. So-and-so of other families had been living in high spirits in recent years. I had been having mental breakdowns every day during this time. He said that I should go abroad to see a brain specialist to treat my love-struck brain. He sighed a long sigh and lifted the restrictions on me. Finally, he said something that made me sad and helpless. Son, Dad doesn't expect you to be useful. As long as you are safe and sound in your life. The next day, I woke up from the soft bed in the hotel. I always felt like it was a dream. When I woke up, that person was forever left in the dream. Richard informed me that things were done. I stretched my muscles and returned to the company again. This time, I no longer walked into the company gate with the mentality of working. Colleagues who were bowing their heads and typing on the keyboard heard that I was coming. One by one, they stood up. Robert? How dare you come back? Hurry up and pack your things and leave. Yes. Yes. Really shameless. Get out. They spoke louder and louder. They wanted Frank in the office to hear their voices and get a good impression. I smiled faintly and walked to the office door. Frank was in a state of anxiety answering the phone. Are you crazy? I invested a small goal in the company. $5 million and let me give it away as an apology. No. At least tell me who I offended. What? People from Beijing? I haven't been there. I really didn't cause any trouble. I can swear. 14-Page thoughtfully brought him a cup of coffee. He was busy answering the phone and pushed it away randomly. The coffee and the broken cup spilled all over the floor. She silently squatted down slowly. Only then did she notice me standing at the door. Don't pick it up. Be careful not to cut your hand. When I said this, I was shocked myself. Habit is really a terrible thing. She stood up with complicated meaning in her eyes. I'll give you some money. Don't come and make trouble anymore. At this moment, Frank glanced at me. He nodded and bowed hurriedly and hung up the phone. He walked towards me with a swaggering gait and wanted to hit me. Little punk. I was just looking for you. You came by yourself. I rolled up my sleeves. He shrank his neck in fright and didn't dare to drop his fist. The colleagues outside had been staring at the office. They wished they could stick their ears to the door. I took a few steps and sat on Frank's boss chair. I played with the grinding wheel of the lighter. The chair is really comfortable. Paige. Is this what you want? I raised my head and found that Paige had been looking at Frank. I knew very well what was in her eyes. When she loves someone, it's not like this. Frank's face didn't look good. He picked up his phone and started to call people. Suddenly, many people poured into the company. All of them were in black suits. Both men and women. The beautiful secretary with a strong queenly style who was walking at the front stopped in front of Frank with a contract. Sign. Frank gritted his teeth, took out his pen trembling lie and quickly signed his name. The secretary nodded in satisfaction, walked up to me, then slightly and handed me the contract with both hands. Robert, the transfer contract is ready. Please take a look. Frank stood up abruptly and pointed at me, asking the secretary, "What the hell? You call him that punk Robert? Are your eyes okay? Beauty." 15 The beautiful secretary rolled her eyes and ignored him. Instead, she continued to say to me, "Robert, the boss wants to invite you to a dinner tonight to apologize to you." Frank jumped 3 feet high. What the hell? My dad invites him to dinner. What crew are you from? Paige seemed to feel very embarrassed. She poked my shoulder. For old times' sake, you don't have to find your face back. After all, you still have to live in the future. I signed the contract and closed it. Okay. Replace everything in the company with new ones. Tear down this office too. The beautiful secretary nodded obediently and said, "Okay. I'll do it now." Frank also seemed to feel that something was wrong. He picked up his phone and called his dad. In less than a minute, after Frank hung up the phone, the look in his eyes when he looked at me was full of shock. He pushed Paige in front of me. His tone softened by 7 points. "No. Brother. You pretended to be weak, but are actually strong. If you had told me your identity earlier, how would I dare to snatch a woman from you? Is it too late for me to apologize now? This woman is not worth 95 million. Paige gave me a puzzled look and then looked at Frank. Robert's identity? Frank looked frustrated. He spoke quickly. Didn't I tell you at the dinner table before that there is a young master in Beijing? A silly guy is willing to be a wage-earner for 3 years for a woman? That's him. In order to make his dad recognize this daughter-in-law. It was so legendary at that time. The pure love warrior fell down. The idol is actually in front of me and I didn't recognize him. Look at this mess. He took out a cigarette and eagerly handed it to me. Brother. Calm down. It's all a misunderstanding. I haven't touched this woman. Your kick last night made me impotent. I still have to go for an examination today. Frank is indeed a man who can bend. Unfortunately. No matter how well he acts, the trace of resentment in his eyes still betrays him. I didn't take that cigarette. I frowned. Don't call me brother randomly. With your status, you don't even have the qualification to talk to me. Quickly take all your subordinates and get out. His body stiffened for a moment and he showed a false smile. Okay. Brother. I'll leave now. 16 Only I and Paige were left in the office. She put away her surprised expression. Her throat was a little tight. Is it fun to play with me like a fool? I said. I couldn't say it before. Now there is no need to explain. Her eyes were firmly fixed on my face as if she wanted to see through me. So you loved me so much and gave up so much for me. It was me who missed it. Her tears slid down just in time. The corner of her mouth pulled up a bitter smile. I turned my head away and stared at the lighter in my hand. For old times' sake. I won't target you. But I can't let Frank go. She took a step towards me. Suddenly, the door was pushed open and a person who was running very fast threw herself on me. In the next second, my neck was circled and a soft lip blocked me. I firmly pressed the person who attacked me. After seeing who it was, I was speechless. Samantha. What are you doing? She suddenly buried her head in my neck and Coco Thisli said softly, "Thank you, Brother Robert, for the $10 million check. I will listen to brother from now on." The door was slammed shut and Paige left. Samantha let out a breath. Only then did she stand up from me and wipe her mouth. Help in time of need. Beware of green tea. I smiled. Thank you for saying that. She secretly glanced at me and was a little embarrassed. It was she who kissed another man in front of you first. I helped you get back at her. This is treating others in the same way they treat you. Don't say thanks. Do something practical. You sacrificed a lot. I suddenly remembered something and reminded her speechless lie. Don't do this next time. You have a boyfriend. She scratched her head and ears for a while, picked up her bag and said, "Mind your own business," and left. She really comes and goes like the wind. My phone kept beeping. The company's small group that had kicked me out before pulled me back again. "Robert, you actually have such a strong background and strength. Please accept my admiration. Low-key and easygoing, handsome and powerful. Your workability is also top-notch. I can't believe how lucky I am. You are actually my boss." A group of fence-sitters. It is also because of this that they are more likely to hold their positions firmly in various complex environments. After experiencing the sorrow of being a wage-earner, I suddenly felt some emotion. 17 After leaving the company, there was a long line of luxury cars parked on the street. Pairs of eyes were shining brightly, as if welcoming me home. The driver opened the door for me. I got in and looked at the starry sky lamp on the top. It was a strange and familiar feeling. I opened the onboard wine cabinet and poured a glass of wine. After not drinking for a long time, I was actually choked. There was a yellow-haired young man on the side of the road taking crazy pictures with his phone and shouting loudly, "Sister, does your new brother-in-law's family have this car? Look at that big gold logo. And the body is so handsome." I pressed down the car window a little. The yellow-haired guy just happened to look into my eyes. His pupils were shocked. Am I seeing things? The person in the car seems to be that useless Robert. Paige pulled him to the side. She didn't dare to look at me. Her voice was muffled. "Don't talk anymore." When I returned to the villa arranged by Richard, after having dinner, there was an old man standing at the gate. He nodded and bowed and put the gift on the ground. "Robert, I'm here to apologize for my son." I glanced behind him. There was no one. He explained nervously, "My son is in the hospital. His private parts are injured. The doctor said it's very serious. It might affect his fertility. Look at this mess." It was clearly all a misunderstanding. I will return to Beijing tomorrow. When he heard this, he thanked me gratefully. "Thank you, Robert, for being magnanimous. Then I won't disturb you anymore." After the door was closed, my phone rang crazily. It was Paige. "Are you there, Robert? It seems that there are thieves in my house. I dare not move. I'm so scared. What should I do? It seems that there is someone hidden under the quilt on the bed. What if it's a robbery? Can you come and save me and take me out? Husband?" 18 I held the phone. The typed words were deleted again. I was suspicious. Why didn't she call the police at this time? Suddenly, looking at the words in the dialogue box, I found that she seemed to be under some kind of coercion. I picked up my coat and asked Richard to call people. Along the way, Richard hesitated to speak. "Don't worry. I won't have any more intersections with her in the future." Only then did Richard breathe a sigh of relief. When I walked into the house that Paige and I used to live in, it was very quiet all around. It was extremely eerie. Suddenly, some people rushed out and started fighting directly. Don't care about anything else. Disable Robert for me. The scene immediately became chaotic. Richard asked people to protect me and get in the car. I called the police in the car. This grandson Frank played some underhanded tricks on me. "I have to make it clear and find trouble with you." Paige's panicked face appeared outside the glass window. She moved her lips. I didn't hear clearly. I opened the car door and only then did I find that her arm was bleeding. "Samantha seems to have been caught by Frank and put in the car." She pointed at the black van across the street. I had a bad feeling in my heart. Without thinking much, I rushed over. I opened the car door. There was no one inside. When I turned around, Paige was standing in the distance with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Robert. I didn't want you to come at first. But he caught my younger brother. The roar of the engine made me unable to hear the rest of her words. In the next second, the glaring high beams came straight at me. 19 My eyes were almost blinded by the bright lights. I just felt a woman rush in front of me. She threw herself at me and hugged me and fell backward. We rolled several times on the ground. There was a loud crash. It took me a while for my tinnitus to subside before I came to my senses. Paige was covered in blood from the impact and had already passed out. Just now, it was she who rushed towards me. I looked up and my heart skipped a beat. I saw a yellow sports car crash into the waist of the black car and forcefully pushed it onto the guardrail. Both cars overturned on the ground. The pungent smell of gasoline made me forget to breathe for a moment. I rushed to the door of the yellow sports car like crazy. The airbags had all popped out. Samantha's eyelids were bleeding. Her eyes were a little blurred. She murmured, "Help in time of need." My heart was pricked by something sharp. I held her down and kept calling her name. Frank climbed out of the other car and staggered towards me. "What, Robert or not? Even Jesus can't stop me from killing you today." I kicked him in the chest. He lay on the ground like a dog, panting heavily. "You made me disabled. My dad actually said that I deserved it." "No, I'm not reconciled." Police cars stopped one after another on the side of the road. Their appearance finally stopped this premeditated fight in time. 20 Frank and his people were arrested. His dad took out the letter of severance with a blood signature, and said that he had nothing to do with him. Paige was originally in the same hospital as Samantha. But somehow, the doctor said that some problems needed to be checked. Paige was transferred to another hospital. My dad and Samantha's dad rushed to the hospital. Before they could stand still, he slapped me. "You still need a woman to protect you. You are so stupid. I will send you to study again." Samantha's dad stopped my dad, who was about to explode. After a long time, he made him calm down. He walked up to me and gave me an even harder slap. "You brat. You are so outrageous. How will you compensate my daughter?" Samantha stood at the door and shouted dissatisfied "Lie, Dad." I quickly walked up to her to check her injuries. She raised her hand and pressed her sideburns. "It's okay. Just superficial injuries. My car has an upgraded safety system. You have to pay me." "Okay. I'll pay." Her cheeks were slightly puffed up. Her beautiful eyes narrowed. "Ouch. My head hurts so much. Help me get on the bed quickly." I carefully supported her shoulder and walked in. After calling the doctor to take a look again, and confirming that she was okay, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Outside the ward, my dad made it clear, "Paige." I asked someone to arrange for her to be transferred to another hospital. Richard said that if it weren't for her pushing you, you would still have to lie in bed for a while. I will take care of her matter. In short, you two should not meet again in the future. I didn't answer. He slapped the back of my head. "Speak. I'm talking to you. What are you thinking? Samantha is injured. No matter how busy her boyfriend is, he should come and take a look at least." I shook my head. "That guy is not good. I have to persuade her." My dad's face was extremely ugly. His 2 nostrils were breathing heavily. He raised his hand and wanted to hit me again. "Stupid. Forget it. I won't scold you. Where does she have a boyfriend?" "As soon as you got married. She went abroad for further studies. She just returned not long ago and got the news of your divorce for Richard. She drove for 5 hours to come and find you. Look at how shameful you are. After a long separation, you were beaten like a pig. No, you are just a blind pig. No, no. Then what am I? You. Before my dad finished speaking, I pushed the door and entered the ward. She looked up blankly and raised the apple in her hand. "What's wrong? Turtle? Why are your eyes red?" I took a few steps forward and bent down to hug her. Her body stiffened. She chuckled. "Hey. Hugging is useless. You have to pay money."